Ever wished you could grab a real-world object, drop it on your desk, and turn it into a clean, usable 3D model in minutes? Today we're putting that idea to the test with the brand new GratKit S1 3D scanner. It promises high accuracy, full-colored scans, an automated turntable, and handheld scanning, all at a price that's stirring up the mid-range scanner market. I've been using it for the past month on everything from tiny statues to car parts, pushing it through best case and worst case scenarios, and some of the results genuinely surprised me. Welcome back to Hoffman Engineering. Let's dive in and see what the S1 gets right, where it struggles, and whether it's actually worth your hard-earned money. Before we begin, this S1 scanner was provided for me to review by GratKit. As with all of my reviews, they aren't paying me for this review, and everything I say is my own honest opinion after using this scanner for the last month. The S1 is launching via Kickstarter in January 2026, and the campaign will run for 1 month. All Kickstarters have risks, so review the page yourself. The hardware that I have here is close to, if not the final hardware, but they are still making software improvements. I'm filming this before the Kickstarter page launches, so I don't have all of those details, but check the Kickstarter page below. My videos do have affiliate links in the description, so if you're interested in anything you see in any of my videos, from 3D scanners, materials, or accessories, you can use those links for the latest discount codes. You can save yourself some money and support our channel. We appreciate it. The GratKit S1 is a DLP structured light 3D scanner that supports both turntable and handheld 3D scanning. Structured light scanning projects a series of white light patterns onto your object. The dual cameras of the S1 detect how those patterns deform over your object and use that to detect depth information. By taking many scans from all different angles, the S1 software will create a 3D model of your object. The S1 also includes a 2.2 megapixel RGB camera to capture texture information, allowing for full-colored scanning of objects. You can export the scanned object in a variety of formats for use in 3D printing, digital arts, game design, you name it. GratKit claims that the S1 has a scanning accuracy of 0.04 millimeters, which is a measure of how close the captured points are to the true physical dimensions of the object being scanned, and they specify a spatial dot pitch of 0.1 to 0.6 millimeters, which is the distance between scan points, or effectively the scanner's resolution. We'll take a closer look at those claims when we go over specific examples. The S1 requires a computer to run the scanning software, called ExploreScan. GratKit recommends a decently modern computer with more than 8 GB of RAM and more than 1 GB of VRAM. I don't have many different computers to test with, but it worked well with my 4-year-old mid-range laptop. The GratKit S1 has a motorized turntable which automates the scanning process. Simply place the object you want to scan on the turntable and press scan. The S1 will flash the structured light patterns onto the object, and if you have textured scanning enabled, it'll flash a few frames of solid light. Then the turntable will automatically rotate the object and take another scan. As the scan progresses, the software gives you a real-time view of the data being collected. It continues to scan, 15 in total, until the entire object has been captured. It takes exactly 1 minute to scan with textures enabled. Structured light scanners can only scan areas that it can see, so most of the time you'll need to flip the object over and do 1 or 2 more rounds of scanning to capture the object from all angles. The S1 makes it really easy to add more scans. You just flip the object over and press scan again. The S1 then does a quicker 6 scan pass around the object. I love how it starts with a detailed 15 scan pass and then does a shorter 6 scan pass as you are filling in the missing areas. It's a small detail, but makes the scanning process just a bit quicker. Most of the time, the software handles the alignment of the subsequent scans automatically, showing the real-time update as the scan progresses. Sometimes it can get confused by the alignment, but it does have a manual alignment mode which asks you to select 4 points on both scans and uses that to align things. It was very easy to adjust the alignment. I really liked the turntable mode of the S1. I found it worked incredibly well, and the automated turntable made it just so easy to scan an object. In turntable mode, the S1 has a minimum scanning size of 50 by 50 by 50 millimeters, and a max scanning size of 200 by 200 by 200 millimeters. I'll go over all the post-processing of the scan data in just a second, but before that I wanted to show the second scanning mode of the S1. Simply grab the handle of the S1, lift it off the magnetically attached base of the turntable, and suddenly the S1 transforms into a handheld 3D scanner. In this mode, the scanner is constantly scanning at a smooth and consistent 10 frames per second. In handheld mode, you can move the scanner around the object to scan from any angle. This is great for larger objects that otherwise wouldn't fit on the turntable. In handheld mode, the minimum scanning size is 200 by 200 by 200 millimeters and up to 1000 by 1000 by 1000 millimeters. Handheld scanning also has a pretty decent working distance, between 300 and 600 millimeters. And unlike some of the other handheld scanners that I've used, the S1 also has a relatively large scanning area of 200 by 170 millimeters at 400 millimeters away. That is very helpful when scanning handheld, as it can help the scanner see more of your object, which lets it track the object easier. Smaller scanning areas can make scanning more difficult, but that wasn't a problem with the S1. If it does lose tracking, then you just need to move the scanner back to an area that you've already scanned, and the S1 picks up right where it left off. It was quick to start tracking again. Handheld mode was also interesting because the software seems to be doing clever things about only capturing new frames when needed. I'm not exactly sure what it's doing, but as you watch the scan, the frame counter at the top does increment at a good 10 frames per second when scanning new areas. But as I hover over areas that I've already scanned, it seems to know that it already has all of the data and it doesn't capture new frames. I think this is great. It saves on the complexity of the scan data, doesn't capture redundant frames, and that saves on processing time after the scan. I think this is the first handheld scanner that I've seen doing something like this. The S1 uses a software called ExploreScan, which you can get a copy of on their website. I found the software easy to pick up and use. The S1 comes with a calibration card, and the software walks you through calibrating the scanner's turntable. It was a simple process. Then to scan, you first choose the mode, turntable, or handheld, and then you select a few options. First is whether you want a colored scan with textures or just the uncolored gray geometry. The second options change. In turntable mode, it asks for accuracy of standard, higher, or highest, and in handheld mode, it asks for the size of the object. Both do the same thing, and it helps the scanner know how high resolution it needs to scan. Smaller objects need more accuracy, but results in larger file sizes and processing time. Finally, you choose between the S1's two tracking modes, feature or markers. Feature mode uses the geometry of the object itself to know how the object has moved between frames. This is great for objects with unique geometry where it's easy for the scanner to know what part of the object that it's looking at. For objects with fewer features, like the smooth bumper of my car, feature mode will easily lose track of it as it can't tell where it's looking. For these objects, marker mode is useful. Put a bunch of marker dots randomly over your object, and those reflective dots will help the scanner know exactly where it's looking at. The S1 seems to want about 5 or 6 dots in view at all times. For my car's bumper, I originally had the dots too far apart, and the S1 could only see about 3 or 4 at one time, and that wasn't enough for a good scan. But after I added just a few more dots on one half, the S1 was able to keep track without any issues. ExploreScan has all of the features that you'd want in a scanning application. After each scan, it has the tools to clean up the point cloud, letting you select and delete points that aren't needed. And once you are done scanning, you enter the mesh processing mode. Here you can fill any gaps to make the mesh watertight, and you can simplify the model, apply smoothing, and have the software detect and delete isolated faces. Each option gives you settings that you can adjust, shows you a preview, and lets you switch between the preview and the original model so you can easily see the difference that it makes. Each step takes just seconds to process. It's very quick, and at the end you have a nicely processed mesh. If you scanned in colored mode, then you can also apply the texture map here. Textures do take a little longer to process, 40 seconds in the case of this Vault Boy, and up to about 2 minutes for some of my larger scans. But compared to many other scanning software that I've tested, ExploreScan was very quick to process. And once you are done post-processing, you can export the final scan as either a .stl, .ply, .obj, and even a .3mf. A nice variety of file types. I like that flexibility. The S1 comes in a nice looking package. There is no separate carrying case, but the box makes it easy to pack away and store the scanner when not in use. The manual is nicely written and walks you through how to assemble and use the S1. Inside we find the calibration board, a black felt blanket which can be used as a backdrop, a Michelangelo test sculpture, the handle, and the S1 scanner. Underneath we have the turntable, a soft carry bag, and all of the cables, and then the parts of the turntable frame. Assembly was very quick. There is a hex wrench that is magnetically stored under the turntable frame. Use that to screw together the frame to the turntable, and then screw the handle onto the scanner. Then the handle just magnetically attaches to the frame, securing it. The turntable attaches to the scanner with a short USB cable. The scanner uses a USB 3 cable to connect to your computer. It has a Type-C connector for the scanner, and then a Type-A port for your computer. It also has a separate Type-C power input, since the scanner needs more power than a normal Type-A port can provide. So use the included cable and power plug to connect to the cable. And assembly is complete. You're ready to scan. So with all the specs out of the way, let's throw everything we have at it to see how the S1 performed. First up, the included Michelangelo statue. Scanning was easy in turntable mode. I only scanned 2 orientations, although 3 would have been preferable because it didn't capture one of the bottom edges of the base. But the S1 did a good job at the details in the hair and the beard, and it even captured the Michelangelo text at the bottom. Although the smoothing post-processing was a bit too aggressive, smoothing out that text just a little too much. Overall though, a good first example. This 3D printed Kerbal is over a decade old, and it has seen some things, but the S1 did a good job at capturing all of those defects, split layers and all. small. I like this model because the head blocks the back of the helmet, so the software is forced to fill in the missing details. ExploreScan decides to fuse the helmet to the back of the head. Not an unexpected result. I like the resulting textures, the colors and details look good, capturing even all the scuff marks and defects over the years. This Vault Boy pop figure is a fun one to scan, because sometimes the black eyes and shoes can really throw off scanners. The S1 did a great job with the non-black parts of the object, but the black eyes and shoes were given a bumpy surface. I have more black object tests a bit later, so hold that thought. The resulting mesh looks really good though. It filled in the missing neck geometry just fine, and again the texture map looks great. This Jade skull is a worst case scenario for a lot of 3D scanners. First, it's 3D printed from a slightly translucent jade filament that some scanners do not like, and secondly, it has hundreds of very tiny holes going into a large cavity. The S1 did a surprisingly good job with this scan. There was no tracking issues due to the automated turntable. It did miss a large section of the inside cavity, although I should have done another scan at a different angle for that. The final mesh shows the S1 was able to correctly resolve the largest of the holes towards the top, around 3 to 5 millimeters. But once the holes got smaller than about 2 to 3 millimeters, it ended up closing those up. The S1 has no issues capturing the jade filament though, and all of the divots on the surface were captured. This Voronoi Bulbasaur is also a torture test for scanners. The tubes are constantly occluding each other, so it can be hard to fully scan every tube, so the software has to deal with that somehow. After I flipped the model to scan the bottom, the automatic alignment was thinking for an unusually long time. 3 minutes later, it finished thinking, but it aligned it incorrectly. But manual alignment took just a few seconds and it worked great. The resulting scan had a lot of artifacts. There was a lot of random point cloud data just kind of floating on the inside of the model. ExploreScan does give you tools to select and delete the bad data, but their lasso tool works best for bad data outside of a model. There is no good way to select data from inside of a model without also selecting parts of the model itself. You'd have to line up the empty holes and select through that, which would be tedious. And remove isolated faces also didn't clean them up. Some way to delete all of those smaller blobs like this would be useful as a future improvement. This statuette was resin printed and packed full of details. The S1 did a great job at capturing the form, but it did struggle to resolve the very fine details like the filigree of the headpiece and armor. But we are talking about sub-millimeter features here. The S1 has a 0.1 to 0.6 millimeter spatial dot pitch, so these small details would only be a couple of points each, which is why most of these details are lost. White light scanners can often struggle to capture black objects, for obvious reasons, but the S1's auto contrast mode did a good job with this PS4 DualShock controller. It definitely struggled more than the non-black scan, and just like we saw with the Vault Boy's black eyes, the S1 gave the black controller a very rough surface finish, but simplifying and smoothing resulted in a great looking scan for such a matte black object. On the other side, we have this very bright white Stadia controller. Here the S1 has no issue scanning the white surface. We can see the surface is very smooth, and it's only the black buttons, joysticks, and D-pad that are missing. ExploreScan did a good job filling in those missing details. The final texture map was very blown out though. The white surface texture hides any details of the surface. So let's start testing larger items. It's time for some handheld tests. This 3D printed dragon is always a fun test. I would scan a section at a time and then rotate the model and start scanning again. The S1 did a great job resuming tracking, and it was pretty easy to complete the scan. An interesting thing here was that I had to run out and do something after the scan, so I saved the project and came back to post-process it later. This was the first time that I reopened a project, and I was surprised to see that it effectively replays the scan path when you load it up, so you get kind of a cool time-lapse of the scanning process. Neat. The final scan looks pretty good, but the handheld scan is noticeably less detailed than the highest resolution turntable scanning mode. This model has thick 3D printed layer lines, and a few defects that are very visible, like the bad layers at the top of the head and the wings, but the S1 just smoothed those over. This lion statue can be a tough one to scan. It has a very reflective gold surface, as well as small gems and mirrors, and, well, the S1 could not scan this object. It couldn't get more than a frame or two in before it would lose tracking. To scan an object like this, you would need to matte the surface with a scanning spray or powder. That's not too surprising. This Master Chief helmet was a fun one. The scan itself was fine, the S1 was able to scan both the inside and the outside, and it did a decent job tracking, and even the large reflective visor didn't cause any issues. However, when I tried to post-process this project, ExploreScan crashed every single time. This is the only file of all of my tests that crashes. I'm still working with GratKit on this issue, but it was the only crash that it experienced. But compared to some of my other recent scanning reviews, cough the toucan cough, I can handle a single crash. Hopefully whatever is causing this issue will be fixed in a future software update. My last tests were all automotive scans. This bumper is very smooth and featureless, and unsurprisingly the feature scan mode didn't work on it, so this is the perfect use for the included marker dots. My first try didn't work either, there just weren't enough markers to keep tracking, but after adding more, so that about 5 were always visible at one time, the S1 was able to scan it. And I scanned this door panel using feature mode. It was able to scan most of the main panel without issues, but the more reflective metal frame gave the S1 problems, so I wasn't able to scan the entire door. The final mesh of the panel looks pretty good, but it is missing all the metal details of the door itself. And finally, I scanned the center console of my Chevy HHR. The panel is mostly black and gray, with black buttons, black screens, and black AC vents. I knew that the S1 might struggle with it, and as expected, while the S1 was able to record the data, it is missing almost all of the details. If you look at it with textures, it looks almost passable, but once you turn off the textures and just look at the underlying mesh, you can see that the S1 did really struggle with the interior scan. The gray surfaces were great, but the S1 struggled with anything black. So in conclusion, I found the GratKit S1 to be a flexible 3D scanner offering both an automated turntable and handheld scanning modes. It excels at turntable scanning. It is easy to scan an object, flip it over, and continue to scan until all surfaces have been scanned. And it was quick. The first scan takes less than 60 seconds, with each following pass only taking 30 seconds. The accuracy and resolution is highest in turntable mode, with the resulting scan looking really good. I like the magnetic attachment of the scanner's handle. It was nice to be able to just lift away the scanner and suddenly you are in handheld scanning mode. With the S1, you are still tethered to your computer and external power, but the cable is long enough that even scanning a car's bumper wasn't a problem. Handheld scanning does result in slightly lower resolution when compared to the highest resolution turntable scan, but it does allow you to scan much larger objects, up to 1 cubic meter. The handheld scanning felt very smooth, and even though it only claims 10 frames per second, the feedback was very instantaneous and it felt like a higher FPS than that. ExploreScan was a great software to use. It was easy to jump in and learn, and it's quick. In a few of my recent reviews of other scanners, I've gotten used to post-processing steps taking 10, 20, or even 30 minutes to complete, but with every single one of my tests with the S1, post-processing was completed in just 5 minutes or less. The S1 does have its limitations. As with all structured light scanners, both reflective or transparent materials will be problematic, but you can use scanning spray, or my favorite, dry shampoo, to coat the object for easier scanning. And while I was able to get black surfaces to scan on the S1, the results were rougher than non-black surfaces. And finally, I did have that one crashing issue with the Master Chief helmet, but other than that one test, every other project file behaved normally. The white structured light scanning also doesn't make it suitable for facial scanning, as you wouldn't want to stare into it. The GratKit S1 is launching on Kickstarter in January 2026. The super early bird pricing is $649 US, with the early bird pricing at $699 US. Then after the Kickstarter campaign ends, it'll be available via their website and Amazon. GratKit has told me that the MSRP is $999 US, and although sales might bring the price lower, it will never be as low as the early bird Kickstarter prices. At the Kickstarter's sub $700 price, the S1 is an amazing value. After the sales, the $999 MSRP is an interesting price point. That would make the S1 less expensive than many of the other automated turntable scanners from companies like Einstar, but it is more expensive than some of the more hobbyist-focused handheld scanners from companies like Revopoint or Creality. Those scanners don't have automated turntable features though. I'd recommend the GratKit S1 if you are looking for a mid-range 3D scanner with an automated turntable. The handheld scanning mode is convenience for the occasional scan that needs it, but the turntable scanning is where the S1 excels. And at the $1,000 price point, it does beat the price of most of the other automated turntable scanners on the market. But if you're interested, picking it up during the Kickstarter will save you hundreds, and that seems like a great deal to me. So thank you all for watching my review of the GratKit S1 3D scanner. What is your favorite feature? What features do you think it's missing? Let me know in the comments below. And I have plenty of upcoming projects and reviews in the works, so be sure to subscribe to Hoffman Engineering so you don't miss out on those coming soon. So thank you all for watching, I'll see you all next time.